One of my proudest moments is the entire page devoted to Life of Brian. 2 columns, the Protestants protesting, 2 columns, the Catholics protesting, 2 columns, the Jews protesting. That was fantastic. I thought we really hit everybody quite evenly.
The religious community began to wage war on Brian. Demonstrations were hastily organized.
Well, there were going to be riots. They actually were saying people were going to be killing each other, rioting. Yeah. I just knew it was going to be fun. And it was. They didn't let us down. They were out there parading, marching, screaming, and shouting, just like one would expect.
I don't remember any anxiety at all when they started protesting. I remember just thinking, And you've got to remember that we were not strangers to protest and disapproval. Almost everything I've done in my life at some point or another has been disapproved of or protested against by someone.
One of the biggest demonstrations was by an organization called Citizens Against Blasphemy in New York, headed by the Reverend Roger Fulton.
A group of rabbis and priests held demonstrations over this past weekend, and they were demonstrating against a movie called The Life of Brian. About 250 people gathered in front of the Warner Brothers offices.
Whenever something comes out that at all touches on religion, there's a certain segment of people who are going to be kind of get that Home Alone look on their face, and they're going to be horrified that this is happening. And clearly, I mean, see, to me, it doesn't mean the film is good or the film is bad. It just means that when a film like this comes out, people likely, without even seeing it, are going to be offended by it, upset by it, going to feel the need to demonstrate.
Well, you've got to remember that Christianity in America is mainly about sex. They're so deeply uncomfortable about every aspect of sex that they don't much care about wars or destroying the environment or financial corruption. But anything to do with sex sets them off.
Life of Brian was now a news story. Michael, Graham and Terry Jones were invited to appear on NBC's The Tomorrow Show to talk about the diverse reactions to the film.
Did you set out to get the Bible? To really stick the Bible?
Got it, haven't you, Graham?
Not with me, no.
No.
No. I don't think we did. Not to get the Bible. I mean, there are bits of the Bible I don't like.
Were you anticipating the challenge to what you will call satire or lampooning that would come from religious organizations?
Yeah, I think we expected to get quite a lot of reaction from religious organisations. Well, not from religious organisations, but we thought there would be a comeback from people.
Yeah. What surprises have you had since the picture was released in terms of the reaction you've gotten? Did you expect that what has happened was going to happen?
I don't know. Of course not. I mean, I just...
Helps to sell tickets.
You never know. I mean, I certainly didn't expect to hear people say that this film might be an incitement to violence. I mean, that was a surprise.
No, that's a
when
very
I heard
silly
that.
thing to say as well, I think.
It's a dangerous thing to say.
And let it be said for the record, gang, this is a funny movie. It's hysterically funny. And why people get upset about it is because I think possibly they see it from, as somebody here said, from their vantage point rather than from the satirical vantage point.
The US protests and marches only served to heighten media profile and increase demand. The original plan to open Brian on 200 screens nationwide snowballed to nearer 600. Certain states banned the film, especially in the Bible Belt, which only fanned the flames more. Back in the UK, word about Life of Brian was spreading, and although the film wouldn't be on general release until the following year, on November the 9th, 1979, John Cleese and Michael Palin were invited to appear on a late-night BBC Two discussion programme hosted by Tim Rice to debate the film in the presence of Mervyn Stockwood, the Bishop of Southwark, and Malcolm Muggeridge, born-again Christian, figurehead of the Festival of Light, and well-known friend of Mary Whitehouse. The stage was set for one of TV's all-time great ding-dongs.
There was obviously going to be quite a heavy interview, perhaps the strongest criticism we would face. And John and I remember actually sort of mugging up for it, like for an exam, going through my books and, sort of getting all the arguments together.
When I look at that figure, I mean, I know you're going to say Brian isn't Jesus, but I mean, that's just rubbish. The whole thing is quite clearly, if no Jesus had lived, that film wouldn't have been produced.
And the bishop sitting there in all of his purple with the world's biggest silver crucifix. I've never seen one so big, fingering it. And the voices were all headmasters' voices, and they were all dignified.
It's quite humbug to say that this is not a ridiculing of the founder of the Christian religion. and of the incarnation in an extremely cheap and tenth-rate way.
Muggeridge, until he was 60, was a well-known womanizer and drinker. And I suspect to some extent he only got religion after he couldn't do anything else. And Mervyn Stockwood was a homosexual, as everybody knew, and also, as it happens, a heavy drinker.
As it went on, an extraordinary thing happened was that we were the ones with the serious points, and they were the ones who were playing to the crowd.
I simply don't think it was worthy of you. It was the sort of thing, as I say, that at Cambridge the footlights did on a damp Tuesday afternoon. Or the lower fourth when I was a schoolmaster.
You keep making the basic assumption that we are ridiculing Christ and Christ's teaching, and I say that we are not.
But do you imagine that your scene, for instance, of the Sermon on the Mount, the scene in your film of the Sermon on the Mount, right, is not ridiculing one of the most sublime utterances that any human being has ever spoken on this earth? Of course it is.
No, it's
Absolutely
making fun
not.
of the guy who's remembered it wrong and of the people who don't understand it and miss the point.
Well, I think
that's really unfair, because I think that a lot of people looking in will think that we have actually ridiculed Christ.
Yes.
Physically. Christ is played by an actor, Ken Colley. He speaks the words from the Sermon on the Mount. He's treated absolutely respectfully. The camera then pans away. We go right to the back of the crowd to someone who shouts, "Speak up," because they cannot hear him. Now, I mean, if that utterly undermines one's faith in Christ, then I think the faith cannot be terribly strong.
I started off by saying that this is such a 10th-rate film that I don't believe that it would disturb
Yes, I know you started with an open mind. I realise that.
I'd never been so sort of angry in public before, I don't think. It was just the way they dealt with it, the sort of venom used just because they liked the sound of the words.
I was aware Michael was steaming, but I was kind of enjoying it because they annoyed me. And I reckoned that we were nailing them. I thought we were winning.
As the debate built to a climax, Muggeridge saw red.
All you've done is to make a lot of people on a cross singing a music hall song. I mean, it's so disgusting when you think of it.
A lot of people go away very happy, laughing at that, their faith not touched one jot.
I don't think it'll touch your faith. I don't think it will.
I had quotes in my pocket from Malcolm that absolutely validated our position and destroyed his own. And out of kindness, I didn't pull them out and read them out because I was feeling kind of sorry for him. Isn't that unbelievable?
You have succeeded in reducing something which has inspired the greatest art into something which is presented in terms of the lowest art. That's your feat. That's your
set up your own terms that we have to influence people. We're not saying we want to influence people. We're trying to make them laugh, make them happy. I mean, that's something that helps.
Gentlemen, I'm going to have to call a halt. I'm very sorry.
And just as it was being wound up, Mervyn the Bishop delivered his pièce de résistance.
Well, you'll get your 30 pieces. You'll get your 30 pieces of silver. Well, I'm quite sure.
I hasten to add.
For those of you who didn't attend Sunday school, this is a biblical quote and refers to the money that Judas was paid to betray Jesus Christ.
I knew then that we'd won, not because we'd been asked to give our arguments, not because we'd, mugged up and knew what to say, but because they had made, to be honest, fools of themselves.
Somebody said afterwards, you won because you behaved much better than the Christians.
But I came off shaking, really. And the Bishop Stockwood came up to me and said, "Oh, seemed to go pretty well." And I realised for them it was a game. They were taking it far less seriously than we were. He had a couple of whiskies and off he went.
Days later, the television show Not the 9 O'Clock News would send up the whole encounter, effectively turning the tables, with Rowan Atkinson as a bishop who had made a film based on the life of John Cleese.
I mean, I actually find it deeply offensive that in a country that is still ostensibly a python-worshipping country, that a 14-year-old child can actually get in to see this film. I mean, there is little enough proper python around these days without parading this distorted garbage about.
Bishop, you directed the film. Did you expect this kind of reaction?
Well, I certainly didn't expect the Spanish Inquisition.
In the UK, the British Board of Film Censors passed Life of Brian uncut with a AA certificate, meaning that anyone over the age of 14 could see it. This despite the lobbying from the Festival of Light, who had pushed for an outright ban.
The miracle was when the censor actually didn't touch the film. That amazed me. I thought it was going to be cut by about 20 minutes. It was very difficult for me to say one of the best British comedies ever without somehow offending even the religious wing of the Guardian readers. So it was one of those things you didn't quite know what to write.
The film had its certificate, but that didn't mean the UK release of Life of Brian would be problem-free, since it was up to local councils to decide whether to allow it to be shown or not. And the Festival of Light now began to write letters to them, still pressing for a ban.
What we said was, look, if you feel strongly about this film, what you have to do is you exercise your democratic rights and write to your local councillors who have authority over the cinemas and who can either reclassify a film or conclude that it's not appropriate for your area.
If you've got the Festival of Light causing trouble, if you've got some fairly conservative views in your local area, then it is quite possible for any local authority to call in a film, view it, and say, no, it can't go on in our cinema.
And it worked. The film was banned in places like East Devon, Cornwall, Swansea, and here in Harrogate.
Councillor Hitchin, why have you banned The Life of Brian?
Because from what we've heard about it, we think that it's going to be an extremely offensive film on religious grounds.
Now, you've not actually seen the film, have you?
No, we haven't.
What reports have you had of it? Where have those reports come from?
The reports have come from the Festival of Light, and they have told us of the attitude of the American Catholic Church and the American Jewish Church.
What do you know about the Festival of Light yourself?
Nothing.
When it got banned in England, we sort of, again, we thought, well, this is very good news for us. And the more publicity Mary Whitehouse gives us, the better, really. So I'm afraid we were applauding any response like that.
When all the good councillors of Cornwall got together in the cinema in Truro, actually it came down to the wire, and the chairman had to give the casting vote, and he voted against the film, and he said that the people who made this film ought to be in Broadmoor local mental prison. And he said, if that's what the cinema is like, and I haven't been to the cinema for 20 years, I'm not going again.
What I was proud about England was that where it was banned in different communities, you know, people would organize share-a-bang parties and go to the communities where you could see it. I thought, the English, good for them. They're not going to be told what to think.
I mean, it was banned in Southampton, they went to Portsmouth. You know, I mean, it happened all up and down the country. And that was better than advertising.
Certain countries, like Ireland, South Africa and Norway, banned Life of Brian completely. The Norwegians would have to go to Sweden if they wanted to see it, where cinemas proudly proclaimed, this film is so funny, they banned it in Norway. Almost 30 years on, the film still provokes controversy, still provokes debate.
Yes, I can see, I suppose, why people would have reactions to something that they think is being offensive to them. And maybe it is being offensive to them, because it is making fun of people who don't think for themselves. And that's exactly what the whole film's about. So I think it's quite right for people who don't think for themselves to get upset about it.
No, I didn't think it was funny. I thought that it was quite an insult, to be honest.
There's a wonderful song at the end, you know, very cheery song, always look on the bright side of life. And you almost leave the theatre with a hop and a skip. But the lyrics of that song actually are quite despairing. And if you listen to Eric Idle saying, we come from nothing, we go back to nothing, you know, we lost nothing. I think fundamentally that is opposed to a faith-based outlook, because a faith-based outlook says, well, actually, there is something at the end of life. There is an afterlife, actually, where we'll be rewarded, we'll be judged according to the good that we did, and we'll be punished according to the bad we did. You know, there is an accounting to be done there. There is hope, actually, for a better life. And that last song denies that. And so I'm not sure that the Python team were just getting at practice of failing. They were actually, in that song, that particular song, they were getting at faith itself.
And the main bone of contention with Life of Brian, from the Christian community's point of view, is very definitely the crucifixion.
To treat crucifixion, I think, as a sort of jolly boys outing, I think that really is something that I felt was really offensive.
Any religion that makes a form of torture into an icon that they worship seems to me a pretty sick sort of religion, quite honestly.
And there's a human spirit that says, no matter what you do to us, fuck you. You know, it's like, that's a human spirit, and that's something that the song sort of does to you too. So I can see very religious people taking that wrongly, but I think it's wrong to take it that way.
In 2004, Mel Gibson released his Passion of the Christ.
This morning on today's box office, The Passion of the Christ. If you lined up to see The Passion this weekend, you were not alone. It's been #1 3 weekends running, pulling in a whopping $264 million so far.
It seemed to Monty Python that the time was right to re-release Life of Brian.
Seeing it so soon after the Mel Gibson film almost made it seem you were more grateful for it, you know, because you say, thank God someone, you know, there's another way to look at this material.
We had no backlash. We had the critics review it in a magnanimous way of seeing it 25 years later in a completely different perspective, comparing it to Mel Gibson's film, which, you know, they were very, very mixed about, and a lot were very concerned about, and they really felt it was a great antidote to Mel Gibson's film.
The intrepid nature of the endeavor, the willingness to make fun of this, the greatest story ever told, I think 30 years on looked even more daring.
And of course, Mel's only mistake in his movie was not having the song. I thought he did really well up to that point with the blood and gore, but no song.
The legacy of the film is unquestionable, and it could easily be argued that it's more relevant today than when it was first released. But would Life of Brian get made in today's climate?
Well, I think it ought to be made today. I think everybody would think twice about doing it today.
I think people are very wary about making any sort of criticism of basic tenets of religious faith, because we've just seen what happens when people get angry. And if it makes them that angry, back off.
When you suddenly have to think to yourself, now, can I write this? Because maybe I'll be offending somebody, some of religious susceptibilities or racial susceptibilities. I mean, it's ridiculous.
I don't think you ever want to hurt anyone's feelings, but sometimes, as with the Islamic world now, there are certain things they believe in which are quite contrary to what we believe in. I don't really think our values are less important than theirs, so I guess you just have to have a clash and say, that's the way it is.
I don't understand, well, I do understand, but I don't want to accept a world of such paranoia, of such thin skin, of such, that causing offense is the greatest crime you can do to somebody. This is ridiculous. What happened to sticks and stone can break my bone, but words can never hurt me.
The film represents one of the happiest and most productive periods in Python history, and many scenes have now achieved iconic status.
The group scenes with the various members of the Judean People's Front, that was a lovely thing to play.
Campaign for Free Galilee.
Y tus trailers. Visita mi canal.
There was invention going on there, as well as basically a good, strong script. And I think scenes like that, everybody felt, this is our one chance to get this.
What tough titty for you, fish face.
There's one particular moment that I love, and that is when Graham is trying to pretend that he's one of the guys teaching, so that the Roman centurions won't pay any attention. And he starts regurgitating this very badly remembered version of the master and the servants. He said there was this master and he had two servants, and somebody who's very skeptical says, what were their names?
What were they called? What were their names? I don't know. And he gave them some talents. You don't know?
I think that is a wonderful, wonderful comment, because it exposes the weakness of fundamentalist Christianity. It's taking stuff literally that is quite clearly supposed to be taken metaphorically, and I love that moment.
Oh, they were called Simon and Adrian. Now, you said you didn't know. It really doesn't matter. The point is, there were these two servants. He's making it up as he goes along. No, I'm not.
It's the, follow the shoe. No, it's a sandal. Follow the gourd is my favorite scene, because it is, in 5 minutes, we do the history of any major religion and all of its heresies and its punishments and its madness. And I think that is an extraordinary scene.
He has given us a sign. sign! Oh, he has given us a shoe! The shoe is the sign. Let us follow his example. What? Let us, like him, hold up one shoe and let the other be upon our foot, for this is his sign that all who follow him shall do likewise. Yes. No, the shoe is a sign.
Comedy is not particularly difficult. You can get laughs doing any number of things, but to get laughs at an intelligent level about an important subject, whoo, that's good.
Always look on the bright side of life. Always
I was blind and now I can see. You're cured, mate. Bloody do-gooder. What have the Romans ever done for us?
Something you've forgotten, and that's to laugh and smile and dance.
Crucifixion? Yes, good.
Silly chumps.
Got lumps of it down there.
And always look on the light.
Me with a poor dying grandmother? 10?
Always look on the bright side of life.
He's not the Messiah. He's a very naughty boy.
Always look on the bright side of life. I told them, Bernie, I said they'll never make their money back.